You're listening to episode number 123 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. The title of this episode is What Do You Need to Do with Your Life? Now, if you're like most people, you probably have gone through a lot of your life saying, what am I supposed to do? What am I to do with my life? Well, if that's ever actually crossed your mind, you're going to love this episode, and we're going to dig into it in episode right now, 123. Keep listening.
Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here.
Okay, so what do you need to do with your life? And in full transparency, I've been there before. What I've been doing, meaning the personal development field, I've been in this field since 1994, professionally speaking. And I even kind of hesitated there. I'm thinking, what year did I get into the industry? And it was 1994. And to be candid, is I really didn't find my rhythm and my niche until a few years ago. Now, even that being said, I'm going to say it here and I'm laughing about it because somebody actually messaged me on Instagram and they were being actually in a very positive way. They were like, "Is your brother-in-law a shaman?" And they were kidding because if you've listened for any time to this episode, you know that my brother-in-law is a shaman and my mentor. So anyway, for many, many years, I've taught subconscious persuasion and influence because you may or may not know I'm also, which I don't use it therapeutically anymore. I'm a master hypnotist. This day and age, I simply use it to help people create change and transformation at a subconscious level in their life. Done it for a lot of years, but yet I've worked with a shaman now for 25 years. And back around, I don't know, 2003, 4, 5, something like that, my brother-in-law said, "How come there are other people?" Because his life story's been ghost written, it's been ghost penned, and it's sold millions of copies around the world. It's actually an iconic piece or pieces of work. He said to me, he goes, "How come there are other people, which you listening, you know their names, how come there are other people talking about the work that I've done and my mentor, who I also knew, he's no longer on the planet, and you're not talking about the work, but you're in the work. And these people have never even met me or my mentor." And he used, the particular name, but he was also inferring or referring to his mentor. Now, the reason why is I've spent many years teaching, subconscious change and transformation, still things that I do in my transformational coaching program, but I never stepped fully into the spiritual work. And I still haven't to the degree that I know that I'm going to. But the reason that I share that with you is because I've been there. I've been there as well. And what I want to point out also is literally my podcast. I don't know how long you've been around. This podcast has gone from nothing to, I don't know, 1,100,000, 1,200,000 downloads or something like that in 12, 13 months. I mean, those are astronomical numbers for a podcast. But what I want to point out, and my business is in the stratosphere, even with COVID-19, my business is doing extremely well. Now, the reason that I tell you that is things, I've always done well financially for many years, but things didn't explode for me or shoot into the stratosphere until about 3 years ago when I said, you know what? I'm going to focus only on transformation. And then what I've really been delving into is transformation from a spiritual point of view. Now, I'd love to go deeper on some of these episodes into shamanism and journeying and different things. However, Maybe that's, for a little later on because I want to keep, I've been thinking about this. I want to keep this podcast and the episodes more transformational with a spiritual bent. Why? Because that can make the biggest impact in people's everyday lives. And that's what I want to do is make an impact in your everyday, what I call your 3D, your physical life. Because without an impact there, the other is hard for people to focus on. Anyway, I don't want to get too far off track here, but what I want to share is that, and I've never been this person. I mean, I've been self employed most of my life after college. But most people come here and they live their life chasing what I call the gold watch, meaning they go to college, which we were taught back in the 80s when I was in college, and the world's changing. But we were taught go to college and you can get a good job and you can work for a company and then you can work for 40 years and you can retire and you can buy a house and make a good living and have a family and blah, blah, blah. And then you can retire and you can get the gold watch. Now, a lot of our culture still works that way. They're still working for the gold watch. But I want to tell you what I know from coaching people for a lot of years is, and even research demonstrates, and I've talked about this in I think, a recent episode, or if not somewhere else, that something like 70% of people say they're unfulfilled in their life work and their jobs. So what I've noticed over the years is that people will say things like, you know what, yeah, I make an okay living, things are fine, I have a mortgage, I pay my bills, the wife and kids are good, or the husband and the kids are good, or partners or whatever. But people are always they're looking for more. And what I see them really looking for is that true passion, that thing that sets them on fire. And it's the question that I started with is what do you need to do with your life? And I know because I've been there, you probably have asked yourself, hey, what do I need to do with my life? And then what many of you do, been there as well, is you're sitting in or you're standing in what I call the round room. And the round room is where somebody says, hey, go sit in the corner, but the room is round and you just go in circles and circles and circles and spend weeks and months, but more than that, years and decades saying, what am I supposed to do? And what do I need to do with my life? I know there's more. That being said, when people chase the gold watch, is that most people live from what I call their lowest function of their being, meaning they're on the planet, they have a certain skill or ability, and then what they do is they exchange that skill or ability and those skills for a paycheck, meaning the grand illusion, or one of the grandest of illusions called security, meaning if I take my skills that I have in accounting or art or whatever it is, I'm going to play life safe and I'm going to do what everyone else says. And I'm going to actually take my skills because I went to college or I went to trade school or I went here or I went there. And then I'm going to trade my skills, which is what people do in the workforce. They don't even recognize they do it. But if you're getting a paycheck for a living, what you're literally doing for the most part is you're trading your skills to the highest bidder in a particular moment. Most people aren't even trading their skills to the highest bidder. They're simply just trading their skills for a paycheck, not even recognizing there could be higher bidders, and especially when they work for themselves. Whole different podcast. I might talk about that in a little bit. Something else I want to share with you later in this episode. But let's go back. Is that most people live their lives at the lowest function of their being, which means they have a skill set, they are alive, they can create some value in the world, and they exchange that for some value back, oftentimes never living anywhere, close to what sets them on fire, what brings them alive, what makes them get out of bed every day and say, thank God I'm alive today. I mean, what an amazing day today because I get to do X, Y, Z. The opposite of that is where most people live from, and that, oh God, it's Monday, another day today, another week, hum ho, the hamster wheel, all that kind of, stuff that a lot of you, the hamster wheel a lot of you live on. I was a political science and science major in college, but it's not exclusive to either of those majors, but Henry David Thoreau. And he said something that's always stayed with me because I've never felt this way. And honestly, I think part of it's just karmic. But Thoreau said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Well, and let's take the word men and change it to people lead lives of quiet desperation. Not all, but I want to share with you a lot of people that are chasing the gold watch. They're living lives of quiet desperation because they know there's more. There's got to be something more. And I've coached people from all walks of life. And I even know people that make a lot of money that I've coached. And I mean, they make millions working a corporate job. But I can't tell you the amount of people that have also made that kind of money that will often say, God, Jim, I hate my job. I hate it. And then I watch all kind of health issues happen because of a result of that. Not always, but a lot of times, many times, health issues will happen. And then I've watched people say, well, you know what? I can't wait to quit my job and retire so then that I can go do what I love. Well, what you love is most likely your spirit, your soul talking to you. So I want to share a personal story with you. This was actually 2001. Now again, I'm sure you've been listening to me for at least a couple of episodes, but my brother-in-law, the shaman, I had a what we will call a non-ordinary, which shamanism is generally working with a shaman is like 90% non-ordinary reality, beyond 3D reality and beyond what you can experience with your five physical senses. But I had an extraordinary non-ordinary reality event happen to me. And I may share the entire story some other podcast. It's a longer story that I don't want to get into right now, but I'd love to share the story. But anyway, so I called my sister and I heard my brother-in-law in the background. I called her after this non-ordinary event and she and I were just jabbering away. And I heard my brother-in-law say in the background, he probably wants to know what happened last night, which was a non-ordinary reality, which is dream time. And then I heard my brother-in-law say, tell him I will call him tonight. And that night around 10 p.m., he called me and we chatted. And we had a long talk and I made very extensive detailed notes of the conversation. But the gist of the conversation was is when I moved to New York City in 1998, I literally kind of put my spiritual work with him on the back burner and I got involved very much in 3D ego. When I say that I got involved in 3D ego, meaning what I call the body, the bag of skin, whatever you want to call it, people call it different things. A bag of bones, a bag of skins, the holy body, whatever you want to call it. But I moved to New York and I got very 3D focused, meaning in my 3D physical reality. And I lost sight to some degree of my spiritual path that I had started years prior. And he got on the phone with me that night and he said something, and I wrote it down verbatim that I want to share with you. And this is the exact quote, word for word. And some of you might be able to see yourself in this quote, or some of it might resonate with you. And it might resonate with you to where you're like, okay, you know what? I get it. That applies to me as well. But he said to me, quote, put your attention back on your spiritual alignment and learn to know yourself. When you know yourself, you will be doing what you need to be doing with your life. Now, listen to that. When you know yourself, you will be doing what you need to be doing with your life. And if you're chasing the gold watch because you don't know anything differently other than, you know what, you don't know what you want to do, so I'm going to just chase the gold watch, or you're in the round room saying, what am I to do? What am I to do with my life? Then literally, you don't know yourself. And I say that with respect and compassion and understanding because, as I alluded to, well, not alluded to, as I shared with you, I've been there. And I wasn't true to myself when I wasn't walking my path. I was walking a path that was giving me a platinum watch and a good life and still kind of spiritually aligned. But you know what? I wasn't on my path like I am now. And I walk in wonderment and watch it unfold. And I'm excited about where it's going and where it's going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now in terms of human time. But you know what? I don't work for a living. I don't. these podcast episodes and my transformational programs and other programs that I share with people that go through my transformational programs, it's all what I'm going to call, air quote, a labor of love, end of quote. But I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm aligned. But where I want to go back here, and please, you may want to even let me read the whole quote again. And I wrote this down. And actually, I had it in a journal that I went and looked up last Friday. Put your attention back on your spiritual alignment and learn to know yourself. When you know yourself, you will be doing what you need to be doing with your life. What applies to me applies to you because we're all, even if we don't recognize it, we're all spiritual beings. So when you learn to know yourself, then you'll be doing, which is the title of this episode, what you need to be doing with your life. Now, my brother-in-law, Don Javier, his mentor, also a shaman, once said to me many, many years ago, 20 years ago, there was a longer passage and I wrote it down, but basically he said that any path you pick in your life is all going to lead to the same place, and that is death. So it doesn't really matter what path you pick, but pick a path with heart and live with passion. And so many of us have the path of heart and we feel it. And that is us knowing ourselves. That is spirit coming through us. That is our soul speaking to us, that path with heart. But yet, what we do is we avoid it out of fear and we actually ignore it. Why? Because we get into what I call our our secondary personality, meaning that we're living out of not our primary personality, which is who we are at a soulful level and letting our soul come through us. We're living at a secondary and from a secondary learned personality, and we live our entire lives, for the most part, many of us do, blinded. So I see my brother-in-law quite often, and I speak to him quite a bit. And every New Year's, we have a gathering. And we gather every month anyway as a group that works with him, but he's my brother-in-law, so I talk to him more and et cetera. But every New Year's, and he's done this for 25 years, every New Year's when he hugs me, he says the same thing every single year. And it's a very simple phrase. He says, I hope you come to know yourself better this year than you knew yourself last year. Let that sink in for you. And do you live from that place? Do you live from, let me come to know myself better, like I started this episode with, or I just shared with you, coming to know myself? Do I come to know myself better this year than last year? And the great place to ask yourself this question is on your new cycle, meaning your new birthday every year. Do you work from, oh, I hate this birthday, blah, 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 I'm getting older, etc. Or do you work from what a blessing? And my intention this year is that I come to know myself better this year than I knew myself last year. Now, as I already have said couple of minutes ago, well, I said in multiple ways, is most people don't know themselves. And because they don't know themselves, they're chasing the gold watch. They're living the artificial life. They're living the unfulfilled life. They're living the life of quiet desperation because either they don't know themselves, which means they're in the round room, or they lack the courage to live the life. Now, when I said just a couple of minutes ago about primary and secondary personalities, is you've learned to be who your ego is, whether you're John Smith or Sally Smith or whatever you are in life. For the most part, you've learned to be that from your parents, from your primary years, your formative years, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, all the way till about the age of 8 or so. Now, your primary personality, if you lived from that place, which I said just a couple of minutes ago, is who you are. That is your soul energy coming through you. That is the 3D ego personality of the soul energy. But most of us, which, and I told you I've been there, we live from our secondary personality. And that's who we've learned to be. That's who we've learned to become. And most of us live in our secondary personalities out of fear. And we have the fear and the illusion that, oh, my secondary personality, it's my gold watch. It pays my bills. It pays my mortgage, all this kind of stuff. Even though I'm unfulfilled, let me live out of my secondary personality for the fear of the illusion that it provides, security for me. And I'm not going to go into it here, but you probably have heard me say before that, there is no security in life. I mean, you can have $10 billion in the bank and you can kick the bucket, leave the planet. I mean, you can have no money in the bank and leave the planet in a plane crash. There is no security. It's one of the greatest illusions that people cling to is they've got to have that all, that huge security in their life when it doesn't exist. And this is why I say is that you must have courage. You must have courage to live your purpose, whatever it is for you. You must have courage to live your alignment. And you must have courage to live what I call living my Dharma. In my transformational programs, at the end of every training that I do, I tell people in the programs, thank you for allowing me to live my Dharma, meaning, I'm doing what I'm on the planet for. And the same thing in this podcast. And, for me, how do I say this? I'm thinking through this. I don't have any notes on this. But, you know, well, let me think here. Yeah, a friend of mine probably in 2014. He is a extremely well-known internet marketing personality, and people literally call him. He's one of the pioneers in internet marketing, and people call him. Many people. He's extremely well known. Call him the godfather of internet marketing. And in 2014, he and I were talking, and he said, and I've known him before he was an internet marketer from our time in New York City back in the late 90s. And he said to me, he said, Jim, you teach subconscious persuasion and influence. You're a multi-million dollar, subconscious influence sales trainer with sales and marketing and advertising. And here's what he said to me. And I think I've said this in the podcast. He said, have you considered that you're not aligned? And I'm just being transparent with you. My initial response was yes, but I don't want to look at that. And I don't want to look at that. Why? Because I've got this really thriving business. And in my mind, I had my spirituality compartmentalized from my business. And not 100% because they're kind of the same thing. My business comes from me. But in my mind, I had them compartmentalized that I have my spiritual life when I'm with my brother-in-law, the shaman, and when I'm in ceremony and I'm traveling to the pyramids or Machu Picchu or grids on the planet. That's one part of my life. And then another part of my life is when I show up in a coat and tie at corporate, which, by the way, I own no coats or ties anymore. And that's one part of me. And I had them compartmentalized. And I was doing very well, and I was helping a lot of people in the world, but I wasn't aligned. And I had, honestly, just full transparency. I was not as courageous as I could have been back then because I'm like, you know what? If I start talking about spiritual stuff and the shamanism and my path and my dharma, oh gosh, I have to start all over again, rebranding and everything else. Full transparency again, in that when I started the spiritual stuff, meaning I got away from the subconscious persuasion and influence in sales, I'm just sharing with you what happened. My business went to, in terms of 3 years of revenue, went to right at 8 figures in revenue. And it's not, I don't want to get into here. It's not about money. Money's a tool. I use money to not buy fancy things in life and have fancy clothes and all that kind of stuff. Money's a tool so that I can reach more people. But the reason that I share that with you is that so many things that you clamor for and you want in your 3D life actually come from the alignment, come from the spiritual alignment, because spirit is divine mind and divine mind is wealth. And when you're in that vein, everything that you want, everything that you want comes through you and to you. I remember when I was 5 years old, and this might apply to some of you guys. I remember my swimming lessons. My mom used to take me every summer, and every summer I got an advancement, and I mean, like different levels and all that kind of stuff. And I remember when I was probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old, we had to swim the length of the pool for our certificate or whatever it was. And I remember that unlike a lot of other kids who jumped off into the pool like 4 to 5 feet from the edge, I jumped off into the pool like 2 feet from the edge. And I knew what I was doing. And like I said, I was probably 5 or 6. Now, why did I jump 2 feet from the edge? The reason why was for safety and security because I knew that if I couldn't, even though I had tons of lifeguards around, I mean, come on, we're 5 and 6 year old kids with a bunch of teenagers around us teaching us, that know how to swim. But I knew that if I couldn't make the swim, I could just reach over and grab the edge of the pool. And maybe some of you can relate to that is that you live your life by just, you can reach the edge of the pool. And I remember in my NLP, neuro linguistic programming training back in the early 90s, Peggy Dean, my NLP coach and trainer, she learned from Bandler and Grindler, the co developers of NLP, and she's kind of a pioneer in the industry. Peggy said to me one time, she goes, Jim, you have a habit of wanting to jump off the high diving board, metaphorically speaking. And then what you do is you swim right back to the shallow end of the pool. Again, I lived in that illusion of safety and security. So as I talk to you about it, I'm not talking about something that I was not familiar with at one point in my life because I was. And I'm going to tell you that's an illusion. Marcel Proust, I believe, that might be my Texas accent, or Proust, however you say his name, but Marcel said the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new lands, but in seeing with new eyes. Seeing with new eyes. And you can't see with new eyes until you swim out in the deep water. And you can't do that until you have courage. And you can't do that until you come to know and have the courage to come know and to know who you are at a soul level. I promise you, I don't know if it's going to be today, next week, a month from now, 5 years from now, but I promise you, when you cross what Elton John has that song called, When You Cross the Bridge, Elton John's song, which I love the song. But when you cross the bridge, I guarantee you, no matter where you are in life, your life will change. And it will change in ways that you can't even imagine. Now, the whole purpose of this podcast is, in this episode, is about, you know, what do you need to do with your life? And then that comes to, as I talked about, hopefully one of your main takeaways is when you know yourself, you will be doing what you need to be doing with your life. Now, that leads me to you're probably saying, "Well, Jim, how do I know myself?" Well, I'm going to tell you where you can start, but before I do, you might have heard me mention in the last couple of episodes, a little tongue tied tonight, August 11th, 2020. I'm doing a workshop, and the title of the workshop is called How the Law of Attraction Repels the Money and Abundance That You Want and How to Become Rich. Now, if you're brand new to the podcast, you might be saying, "What's he doing talking about being rich?" Blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, we can become wealthy and abundant through spirit and through spiritual means and ways, even in conventional 3D jobs. But I mean, creating prosperity and abundance in your life. Now, I'm putting this together, and anybody in my coaching programs can tell you I've helped many of them go from literally struggling to being quite successful. I myself have gone from literally being almost homeless out of college to quite financially comfortable. I'm going to share with you what I call in this training on August the 11th, and there'll be more details coming next week for sure, registration links and all that kind of good stuff. But I'm going to share with you, which I know you haven't seen these in other places because I haven't, because they're not out there, because I'm the one who put them together. And this is not, ooh, woo woo, law of attraction, which, by the way, go listen to episode number 9 to get primed for this training. But these are 6 practical things that I recognize took me from literally living on a fraternity brother's couch after college to where I am today. And I'm literally quite financially very comfortable today. And I want to share this with you on that training. So I interject here. It's like a little commercial here in my podcast to just remind you to mark your calendar for August the 11th. We're going to be doing the training, I believe, in the afternoon. It's not going to be free, but it's going to be if affordable for anybody who wants to go. I'm going to tell you that. I mean, literally, it's an absolute bargain. It's only literally the cost of a couple of lunches. Anyone that wants to attend can attend if they're serious about transforming their relationship with money and bringing more abundance into their life. Okay, now let's go back to what I was saying here. So mark your calendar. Okay, reminder, mark your calendar August 11th. All right, so the $64,000 question in this episode is, how do I know myself? Right? I mean, I'm sure it's probably already entered your mind as you're listening. How do I know myself? Well, we live in a culture, we Americans here, people always want answers. We want short, quick, give me the answer, quick, chop, chop, Amazon Prime. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go look for the answer on Prime and I'm going to buy it and have it delivered by, you know, noon tomorrow or FedEx or whatever. And of course, that's just an example and a metaphor. But we live in a culture that wants everything expediently and everything now. And I know I've said before in episodes before, and I think one of the most powerful episodes, if you ask me, which is not one of the most popular episodes, and I understand why it's not, but is episode, I believe, number 6, when I talk about using the living or using but living to your highest potential. And the episode, I believe, number 6 is titled that, How to Live from Your Highest Potential. And that is something that if you work with a shaman, that's the first thing shamans start immersing their apprentices in. First thing, hands down, learn to quiet your mind. And we don't know how to do that. We live with what I call reptilian brain chatter, 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 chatter times 100, chatter, 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 chatter. But so where to start? Where to start? And that could be episode number 6 here with my podcast episodes. And again, look for the title, something along the lines of living from your highest potential. Because see, when you live in silence, like now, then and only then are you living from your highest potential because your 3D ego can then hear the whisper of your soul talking to you. And this is why so many indigenous cultures, they would do things like obviously, well, years gone by, many years ago, spend all their time in nature because they lived in nature, but medicine wheels and Native American tribes, medicine wheels. This is why in Buddhism, the meditations, the 4 day, the 12-day silent, and I mean silent meditations. And I've sat in meditations like this before, where you're not allowed to speak a word, not even a peep, not even a hum, not even a to yourself, not even a word to your dog, because I've done some of these at home before. But here's the thing: if you want to know yourself, I wish I could just give you a, wave the magic wand, Shazam! Here you go. Bing, there's your answer. Zoltan on the movie Big back in the 80s, and the answer just pops out. I can't do that. This is your work. But I promise you, it's not gold. It's not even platinum. It's diamonds. It's diamonds for all the things that'll bring you when you have the courage to listen to your soul and that whisper to discover who you are. Okay, so your transformational takeaway this week is not a quote, but a quote, a quote by Rumi. And I actually, before I did this episode, I went and looked and I said, what is a good quote about silence? And you can find, as you know, a bazillion online. And I've quoted this before, and I'm going to quote it again because it's so succinct and so powerful. And I have found it to be true in all of my years with a shaman. Doesn't mean I've always exercised it, as I shared with you earlier, but I have found it to be true. And I guess the biggest consolation and peace of mind in my life is the Rumi quote is this: the quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Repeat. The quieter you become, the more you are able to hear. Mark your calendar for August the 11th and look for an email if you're on my list, and we'll be mentioning the link in the next podcast. And before you stop this episode, be mindful of what you're going to do next. Are you going to just shut this off and then zing, go right back to your stuff and your 3D world and the noise and the honking? Or you know what you could do instead? Maybe you could go outside and connect with Pachamama, Mother Earth, nature, and just sit for a few minutes and at least start training yourself to at least start calming your 3D mind, your reptilian brain. Okay, I'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. You know, if you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.